Today, I'm speaking with Brandon Rhines, a Canadian writer and filmmaker who sold or produced such works including Core Values, John 3:16, and Markings of a Murder. If this video brings you any value, please make sure to like and subscribe for more content. Can you give me a brief idea of how you got started in writing in movies?
I've always been writing something. Even when I was a little kid, I used to write short stories and that kind of thing. And probably around high school, I started really getting into movies, and that's kind of where I got the idea. I wanted to be, uh, at the very least, like a screenwriter, maybe even a filmmaker, that kind of thing. I started writing my very first script. I was probably like 16. Obviously, it was terrible. Um, Kind of even throughout college, I kind of wrote scripts, but it was never something I didn't take it seriously. I never really thought like I could do this as a job. It was kind of like it was basically a hobby. So I kind of wrote some scripts, mostly shorts, couple features. I even tried making a few short films that we shot on video when I was in my 20s, and they weren't very good. I made one kind of action feature with a couple buddies, 2007, and it was not very good either. It wasn't until about 2015 where I got laid off from my day job, and then I was like, you know what? Like, what if I took this writing thing seriously and just like gave it my all? Like, could I make it work? And I think I had enough, yeah, like unemployment insurance to live on for like 6 months. So I was like, okay, I got a 6 months window. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work, whatever, I'll go get another job, but maybe it'll work. I'll just take it a month at a time. So I just started writing like crazy, and I probably wrote more in that 6 months than I'd written like in my entire life. And it was kind of like one day something just clicked where I just started basically working on the craft and just editing my stuff better, just making the scripts better, and kind of like a lot of writers, I'd write way too much, and then I would rewrite it by adding in more crap. And where now I'm just like, you know what, I'm going to tighten it up. I'm just going to make like each scene best as possible, each line as best as possible, each sentence, each word as best as possible. And as soon as I started putting in that effort, it just kind of, I started selling things. And the first couple of shorts I made, I gave away for free, basically for kind of newer filmmakers to turn into a short film. And then I would just keep pitching my scripts, and I would say, you know, my last short script is being produced in Colorado by such and such a filmmaker, and here's my new one. And then I would start selling them. Sometimes I get like $50, $100, $500 and $1,000 for these like shorts I was writing. And next thing you know, it's like, you know what? That's like my power bill for another month. That's my groceries for another month. And so I sold all these like short scripts. Some of them got made, like most of them didn't, but whatever, I still got something for them. And then I started optioning feature length films. And then I started selling a few feature length films. They were all like very indie stuff, but the money kind of added up. It was enough to, I mean, not rich by any means, but to pay my bills for the next month, and the next month after that, and the next month after that. And here we are, like, 9 years later, and I'm still going.
That's absolutely incredible. And what I love so much about your story is how, first off, you're doing everything independently. um, but you started off nice and small. So as you said, you were basically giving away scripts for free, and then it started to attract attention. Then you started out small, $10, $50 for this script, and then it just grew and grew and grew. And next thing you know, it's like, hey, I can just start just constantly just keep writing scripts, sell them, make money, write a script, sell them, and just kind of start in that direction. So on that topic, what's the key? What's the main thing that writers should be learning as far as being able to sell their script? What's the important takeaways?
Um, it's a huge amount of, I guess, like tenacity. like, I have a database going back to 2015 of every single like person I've ever like sent a script to, like pitched to. And if you looked at it, like first assumption, you like a person who didn't know what the business would probably assume I'm a massive failure because I probably pitched to like 12,000 people, and I've had like what, like 10 or fewer movies made. So like I constantly have to pitch, and a lot of them like you just don't get a response. So a lot of them they just pass on the script. Some of them they like it, but they're for whatever reason don't want to make it. And even the ones that do want to make it, even the majority of those somehow fall through and doesn't get made. So you have to hit people up constantly. I'm constantly pitching. Sometimes I'll just cold email people. I don't do that as much as I used to, but when I was starting out, I would just send out a bunch of cold emails to anyone who would listen, and I got a bit of traction that way. Anyone who's looking for scripts, obviously the big ones to go to, but yeah, it's basically like constantly pitching yourself, constantly pitching your scripts, promoting yourself. And it's also just being very easy to deal with. Like writers have kind of a tendency to be pushy and kind of arrogant. And I've gotten quite a few jobs that way. Like I get hired, like most of my writing money comes from being hired to write a script versus selling something that I wrote of my own. I think a lot of writers are like that. And I've gotten quite a few writing gigs, even some of like the higher paying ones, because basically I was just friendlier and easier to get along with than the other writers. There's been a bunch where I was talking to someone and they hired someone else to write the script, and then the guy would, the person wouldn't listen to criticism. They would basically wouldn't do what they told. They wanted to only do their own thing, and they would be arrogant. And the producer would finally get mad and then fire them and hire me. And once that happened, like it's probably happened two or three times. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna make sure that it's like, you know what? I'm gonna be easy to work with because it's a hard industry, and I'm not just gonna I'm not going to be the one to like, you know what? I'm going to tell this producer who's paying me what's right. I'm going to tell them the best script. And it's like, no, they're hiring you to write something and they're paying you. So you should kind of do what they say. Obviously, you can bring up your own, give them your own input, but you're basically a hired person, right? You're not there to argue with them. So it's basically just and you're not being pushy, not, messaging them 10 times a day, trying to like, you know, for whatever reason, like there's so many things you could do to kind of like watch your opportunity. But if you just do those things and you just stay consistent and always like, keep writing more and then just even just things like making your presence known. Like a lot of the attention I've gotten for myself is I've directed some of my own movies. And as soon as I started doing that, it really accelerated my script selling because like if all you have is a script, it's hard to promote yourself because all you have is a PDF document or a stack of papers to show. As soon as you've made a movie, you can promote the hell out of that movie, and all of a sudden you got clips from the movie, you got poster art and everything. So when you approach someone, I could be like, "I'm the guy that wrote Grotesque," and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I've seen that on Facebook." So all of a sudden I have a reason to kind of get my name out there more. So even if, depending on what your interests are, but even just, doing some short films and making them yourself, all of a sudden you meet a whole bunch of actors, a whole bunch of crew people just doing this film. And all of a sudden they know your name as both a writer and director. And I've gotten a lot of my jobs through referrals where, so like an actor or, director of photography, someone will be talking to some other director or producer on a different set, and that person will mention they're looking for someone to write a horror script, and they'll be like, oh yeah, you should talk to Brandon. He writes horror scripts. So they'll reach out to me. So it's basically just getting your name known in as many places as possible as a writer. And things I'll go on like Twitter, Facebook, wherever I can, even just Googling it, and just Google things like looking for screenwriter, looking for scripts. I've thought I've sold scripts like that. A couple of years ago, I sold actually didn't sell. I optioned a Christmas movie to someone on Twitter just because I searched on Twitter looking for Christmas scripts, and then I found some woman that was looking for Christmas scripts. So I sent her a DM, told her I had this script. She read it, she liked it, she optioned it, and unfortunately it ended up not happening for whatever reason. But I still got paid for the option. So it's just like that. I know it's like a lot of people have a full-time job, so they don't have time to be working around the clock at this, but it takes a huge amount of effort. I think people have this kind of delusion that they'll write a screenplay and it's so good they'll send it off to Hollywood and they'll buy it. It doesn't work like that. It's just a hell of a lot of pitching. And I have scripts I wrote 7 years ago that I still haven't sold. That and some of them some of them I've optioned a few times. They'll get optioned, and it's looking like it might happen, and then whatever the producer backs out, I get the script back and pitch it to someone else. And I have some now, even as of like 2 days ago, that okay, it looks like it's really going to happen. It's like I've been through that before, so it's like yeah, I don't want to get my hopes up, but um, it's yeah, it's a huge amount of work, and it is soul crushing at times, right? Especially when it's like you're so close to this thing going to happen, and then and for some reason, whatever, whether it's COVID or producer changes his mind, or company changes hands, or some whoever's putting the money in backs out. There's a ton of reasons why it could all of a sudden not happen. But as long as you keep writing and honestly, like the way I do it, like I'm kind of limited by my own kind of like tunnel vision. Other people might have other ways of doing it. They might even, start off doing it a certain way and then kind of veer off, and they might find some other way to pitch their scripts that's working for them. I know there's websites like the Blacklist and things like that that I haven't really used. So it's like I don't know if they're useful. Some people say they are, some say they aren't. I've had some success with Inktip. I know some people say Inktip sucks, but it's like I don't know. I've had some success with them. Screenwriting staffing, I use that service. You pay like $10 a month or $20 a month, whatever it is, and they send you emails or whatever of producers looking for scripts. And if you happen to have what they're looking for, you pitch to them. I've had quite a bit of success with them. So yeah, it's a hell of a lot of work, and you kind of almost have to spend more time pitching your scripts than writing. You obviously got to write to create new material and to stay good, but like you have to pitch a lot.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's funny because as soon as you were saying that, yes, there's this sort of weird idea amongst new filmmakers that you all of a sudden write a script and that can automatically get sold if it's a good idea. And it's funny because a lot of that confusion I've noticed comes from these weird anomalies where you have the El Mariachis, the Clerks, there was that one horror movie, can't remember off the top of my head, but there's these oddball scripts and movies where just some new person just made this movie on a shoestring budget and then all of a sudden it explodes. Well, as I said, those are anomalies. That's not the norm. And as he said, the norm is working extremely hard to make as many scripts, sell as many as you can, networking, going on these websites, emailing, phone calling, and trying to create as many chances for yourself to sell a script as possible, just so you have even just a small handful of them actually sell and do the work for you. What I'd love to talk about a bit more is, so as you said, you got hired a lot to do some writing. I saw on your IMDb you've had quite a lot of experience writing TV shows and writing episodes. So what would be the process of a producer comes to you, they want to hire you to write, whether it's a short film, TV episode, feature film? How does that process work? How does being hired as a writer go about?
Basically, I have to talk a bit. But I don't have that much experience in TV because it's like IMDb is just kind of weird like that because I a lot of the TV credits I have are just like series, like web series I've made myself. So I don't really count them. And I guess I did get hired to write a bunch of the reality TV stuff for like the hunting and fishing, like outdoors kind of shows in Canada for Wild TV. I did a bunch of those. But I consider like my that like 98% of my experience is in like shorts and features. But yeah, basically like it's kind of different every time, but there are similarities. So usually I'll meet the producer somehow, they'll reach out to me, or I'll hear they're looking for a writer and I'll pitch myself to them. Um, sometimes they have like sometimes they have like half a script done, or sometimes they even have a full script done, and they just need someone to improve it. Like some of my writing gigs are writing for people. They're from either from other countries or they're from North America, but English isn't their first language. So they'll write the movie as best as they can, but their English is pretty bad. So they'll say like, "Can you just turn this into proper English?" So I've gotten quite a few of those jobs. But sometimes they try to write a script, but they're not really a writer, so they need someone to improve it. Sometimes they'll have like a treatment or an outline. Sometimes I've done ones where they just have like they don't even really have anything written. They'll just have like a sentence or two about what they want. So they'll be like, okay, it's going to be about two vampires, these two like female vampires. They're traveling across the country. Um, and they have a certain thing. They're like, hey, we own a bar, so we park take place in a bar. And other than that, do whatever you want. And so you're like, okay, so you go and you'll come out, you'll sign a deal. They'll be like, okay, well, we'll give you like this much money to start, and then this much after the first draft, and then this much after the second draft, or whatever kind of deal you work out. And then basically you just go and write the script, and once you finish each milestone, you get paid and that kind of thing. And so that's usually how it works. I've never really written anything on like the studio level, so I don't know how much I don't know how it works there. But that's kind of the way I do it with the indie films. And I found a lot of the time the jobs that you end up actually getting that end up they follow through, you get paid, everything goes well. Things tend to be a lot easier. I've worked with some producers where it's just a big hassle. It's like every step is a hassle trying to get everything done. And those ones are usually the ones that don't work out. I find that usually the people that have experience and that can actually get a movie made, it's like you get hired quickly, everything gets done simply, and that there's just not so many like hoops to jump through. So that's usually how it works. Is just like you come up with some sort of deal, and then you keep them. So some of them too, like they'll because obviously you always get rewritten. So some of them they'll tell you like I've even done some ghostwriting, which I know there's like some online debate over whether or not you should do that. But sometimes, whatever, if I didn't need the paycheck, someone they just want you to write the script and then they'll rewrite it themselves, put their name on it. I do those occasionally. It's like kind of makes me feel a bit icky, but it's like whatever. If I can make some money at it, I will. But that's kind of rare. But yeah, that's usually how it works. It's kind of different with each person how it's done. Some producers they like to like really kind of watch you as you write, and they'll be like, "You send me like the first 10 pages," and then they'll kind of give me you know notes or whatever on those 10 pages. Others are just like write whatever you want, and some of them like you get very few notes. It's like write the script, send it off, they go shoot it, and it's like wow, like they didn't really have anything to say about it. They shot exactly what I wrote. Other times they change a lot. Sometimes you go through a million friggin' drafts, and there's been a couple times where I finally had to say like I'm not writing anymore because like I keep writing to the end of time and changing everything and then changing it back and then changing it again, and it's like it's too much work. So I always try to be clear that it's like yeah, I'll do your notes and everything, but I'm not going to do infinite rewrites on something because it just wastes your time. But yeah, so I find it changes every time, but that's kind of the structure of things how I've been dealing with them.
Got it, got it. So let's talk a bit about your writing process. What script software do you use? When do you usually write your scripts? What's your process of writing a script? And obviously, I know there's probably a different system for shorts or a TV episode or a feature length movie, but what's your writing process?
I use Final Draft. It seems to be kind of the industry standard. I'm sure there's others, but I use the one I'm most familiar with. Um, I I like to write in the morning, but sometimes it's difficult. So I end up writing later in the day, but I just write whenever I have to. I usually go through like cycles where I'll write, you know, I'll stick to it and I'll go like a few weeks or a month, like just writing consistently. And then I'll start procrastinating. I got other things going on. I won't write as much. And then finally I'll get back into it. And obviously, when I'm making movies, it's like last year, I basically didn't write much the entire year because I was so busy making Grotesque 2 that it just took up all my time. plus you promoting the other movies and trying to raise money. And then it's like, oh shit, I haven't written in so long. So now I'm like, you know what? I'm taking a break from production to like, I'm just going to spend the year, writing the hell out of as much as I can. And my actual process, it kind of depends on my mood. Like most of the time, like I always have some sort of outline, depending on how I feel and how like vivid the script is in my head or the story is in my head. It depends on how much detail I'll put into it. Sometimes I just have like pages of notes of just kind of like here are the main beats of the story, and I'll start writing it and figure it out as I go. And other times, kind of like what I'm going through now, is all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is getting hard to write, and I'm having a hard time figuring out how the plot points flow together, basically. So then it's like, all right, I got to step back and then work on the outline and then figure out the details a bit more, and then I'll get back to actually writing the script. But whatever you have to do to get the script finished, I usually write very long. Like I don't censor myself as I'm writing. I'll just I'll write insanely long scenes with like a whole lot of dialogue. Sometimes the scripts are like 160 pages. I've had some that are like 200. And then it's like, okay, but at least the story's there. And then I'll just go through and I'll start cutting and cutting and cutting. And I found once I started doing it that way, my writing got way, way better. It's like, yeah, I'll write a 2-page scene, but if you take all the best stuff from that and condense it into half a page, it's like you're gonna have a whole lot of good stuff there. Whereas if you start like questioning every line of dialogue as you're writing, it's like, yeah, should I keep this in or not? Then it's like kind of like you're censoring yourself. So I always just kind of like let it flow, get it all on the page, and then start dialing it back after. And and then I'll start like I'll delete entire scenes. If the scene doesn't work so good or it's not needed, I'll just delete that whole scene and then make it shorter and shorter. And then I'll go over it and over it, and I'll start cutting dialogue. And then even once you got like a nice, 90 to 120 page script, like I'll go through it again and again a few times and just like basically anything like say like that's like keep 80% of it and cut 20% of it. So even if it's looking really good, it's like still cut the parts that are not quite so good, and that'll make it even better. And that theory kind of works with the movies too. Like there's a lot of movies that they have a lot of boring parts or parts that are slow. Where I found is like just cut out like even the jokes or the things that are okay, but they're not the best. If you just get rid of them, it makes what's left over even better. And it's better to have just like a short movie or a shorter script that just flows and is easy to read than something that drags. And I also try to make the script like entertaining to read. There's some scripts that it's like, yeah, it's a good script and it'll make a good movie, but it's just hard to read. It's like an effort, it's like a chore to sit there and read. So I try to make sure mine like are so easy to read. They're so to the point. You can basically breeze through them, make it a page turner. Um, because the person reading, especially if they read a lot of scripts, like the last thing you want, they're just like, man, I got to go home from work tonight and then read 6 screenplays. If you do, you want yours to be the one that, wow, that was like fun to read. That was easy to read. It's just they're gonna basically if they go into it in a better mood, I find I can't verify if it's true, but it seems like if they're having fun reading it, they're going to look at it in a more positive light, and they don't have to kind of look past the dreary, boring writing to see what the script could be, right? Because even if all the dialogue's good, the story's good, if they're just like, holy, this is so boring, or, it's just hard to like read the descriptions or whatever. They're not gonna respond to it as well. At least that's what I found.
Hmm. No, that's an excellent point there. So you said that you primarily use Funnel Draft, and you don't try out other softwares. Is that correct?
I think I've tried a couple others before, but it's like I paid for a Final Draft. It's on my computer. I use it. I just don't. I've never found a need to. I mean, most producers like they read a PDF. I mean, you can export as a PDF in any platform you use, so it doesn't really matter. And I found that most of them, especially when it goes into production, the first AD whenever they do their script breakdowns and their scheduling and all that stuff. The studio binder or whatever platform they use, it's like integrated with Final Draft. So they'll usually ask like, "Can you just send me the Final Draft file so that we can just work that right into our software?" I don't know. I'm sure other screenwriting software does the same, but it just seems like they always. I always see a lot of or not a lot, but some people like on Facebook, and they're like, "My producer's asking for a Final Draft file, but I don't use Final Draft. Can someone change my script into like Final Draft for me and export it?" So that kind of makes me think it's like, maybe it's kind of the industry standard, so I should just stick with it.
Okay, I find that very, very interesting, and that's something I'm really learning a lot about because I mean, myself, I don't use Final Draft, mainly because I find I've there's other scripts that I've been able to access for free, and I haven't been in a position to afford such a big expense like Final Draft. Um, and it's interesting because a lot of these other script softwares they understand about sort of like the industry standard in terms of how this script should be exported, and obviously there's reasons behind that. And for me there's a whole bunch of them that I like to use, whether it's their overall setup, or maybe some have some sort of like a digital visual board that helps with that, or maybe their layout is different. And there's always just part of me that's just curious about like, so can none of these work out in the industry, or does it all just go back to you have to use Final Draft?
Yeah, it's hard to say because yeah, I don't have experience with them, so I don't know. But the thing is, I hear even the podcast script notes, they're kind of like they're Hollywood level writers, and they use whatever the one that John August created himself. So I know that there are other ones, and they like someone has to be used. They wouldn't exist if they were impossible to use to actually make a movie. So there's got to be a way to make that happen. Um, so yeah, it's kind of like if you go to any like screenwriting discussion on social media, that comes up often. People are like, "I hate Final Draft," and the people are like, "No, it's industry standard. You got to use Final Draft." And other people are like, "No way, I use whatever." So as long as it's working for you, especially like in your when you're starting out your career, use whatever the hell you want. You can even use Word. That's how I started. To get good. Once you get to the point where you're selling scripts, if it becomes a problem where Final Draft is necessary, okay, well then it's probably worth spending the money on it. But
Mm-hmm.
if it hasn't been a problem for you yet, yeah, just use whatever because especially the first time anyone reads a script, it's like 99% of the time a PDF file. So as long as you're doing that, whatever software you're comfortable using, and some of them might be better. Like even Final Draft has its drawbacks, so there might be other platforms that are just way easier to use. So until it becomes a problem for you, yeah, just use whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, right. Um, I've always thought about like how if you were to ever ask like a painter to come and paint your house, you're not going to be bothered whether they use this brand of brushes or this brand of brushes as
Yeah,
long as the overall job gets done. That's just how I've always thought about
yeah,
script writing. So
yeah.
whatever is comfortable to you.
Yeah, I've found that like the Final Draft's never been an issue until it's like, okay, now we're in active pre-production, and all of a sudden, then the first AD's like, "Hey, can you send me the Final Draft file because I need to import it to break down all the scenes or whatever." That's kind of where it's like yeah, I wonder if I didn't use Final Draft, would that be something that would trip me up? Yeah, as far as just up to the point of even selling a script, yeah, they probably won't even ask what platform you use.
Good point. So, is there any advice that you would give to upcoming writers that perhaps we haven't talked about yet? What would be your go-to advice?
Like develop a thick skin because I mean everyone goes through that, right? Because especially like it's kind of like the newer you are at writing, the better you think you are. And then like it's like as you get better, you start to realize how much work is ahead of you. So it's kind of seems funny to say, but it's kind of true. So it's always that you get that like rude awakening when you're like, you have the script that you're so proud of, you put all this work into it, and then you either get crickets, like no one responds to it, or you get some pretty harsh feedback on it. And years later you'll look back and realize, yeah, that was right, because that was script was bad. I even have scripts that like I wrote. I have scripts that I wrote, say, like 5 years ago, like while I was actively selling scripts for a living, that I would never ever show anyone now because I'm kind of embarrassed by how not good they are. And that was I was at a level where I was selling scripts for a living.
Hmm.
So for people that are just starting out and they've never sold something, like your scripts are probably not as good as you think they are, and you're up against a staggering amount of competition. Like I remember I had one script that the this production company, they put out a call looking for scripts, and then they're like, I talked to the producer, and she was like, "It's gonna take us a while to get back to you." They had something like 12,000 people submit a script to them. I was like,
Wow.
"Holy crap!" So they got back, a couple months later, a few months later, they're like, "Okay, like we've narrowed it down to like 100," and they're like, "You're one of those 100," and then they narrowed down to like 25. I was one of those, and then they narrowed it down to like 10 or 12, and I was one of those, and but they ended up going with someone else. Um, so it's like I was even very, very close. I was in the top, few percentage of all those scripts, and I still didn't get picked because of just the mass amount of volume. So you're not only up against writers who are better than you, you're just up against a huge pile of things of just content out there. Probably not going to get any better. Um, so it's dispiriting at times, and it's funny. Even actually, I came in second. I pretty much never enter screenwriting contests. But I was like, you know what? Now that I did a year of basically not writing much because I was busy working on my movie. I was like, I'm going to try some different things I don't normally try. So I was like, fuck it, I'll enter a screenwriting contest. So I ended up coming in second place, which whatever. But one of the prizes was they you'll get free feedback from like three different um, producers or readers or whatever. So I was like, whatever. Like normally I wouldn't care about that, or I wouldn't even bother. But I was like, whatever. It's part of my win. And I just got the results in yesterday, and two of them got a recommend and some good notes, but one of them got fairly critical notes. So it's like even for me that I've been doing this for a long time and fairly successful at it, I still write things and that are going to get criticized. Um, and it's a it's got to roll off your back. And I remember one time I wrote a script, and I was pitching it to people, and I pitched it to this one producer in LA, and then he read it. He was like, he just like ripped it apart. He's like, horrible story, terrible dialogue, and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, whatever. And it was probably within a week. I think it was like 4 or 5 days later. Another producer in Florida read it, and he absolutely loved it. And he's like, this is great, best thing I've read in a long time. He optioned it, and it almost got made. Like Burt Reynolds was attached to play the old man in the next door in the script, and then Burt Reynolds died, and then it just never went anywhere from there. And I got the script back, so I'm pitching it again. But yeah, so that just goes to show that like one person's opinion doesn't mean much, but you always have to keep improving. And a lot of the times too, it doesn't mean that your script is bad. It's just what the producer's looking for. They have their own ideas too, and they're the ones paying for the movie, and they're paying you. So they're like, okay, like here's some stuff you have to change, and it's like, okay, well, may not want to, but it's like, well, do it or you don't get paid. So you kind of just have to. And the thing is that other people rewrite your stuff. I've had it before, and it's kind of like a kick in the balls at first, but some other you'll get paid for it. They'll option your script. Someone else will change everything, and sometimes they even get their name on it. And it's like this doesn't seem fair, but it's like that's the business. But other times they'll be like, okay, we hired this person to write a script, but it didn't turn out how we wanted. So we want you to rewrite it. Keep some certain elements, but kind of rewrite some other stuff. So you'll rewrite this other person's script. So it's just how it happens, and just I've even found honestly the filmmaking has helped that too. Even just putting my short films on YouTube, and then you start getting negative comments about it and stuff. It just it helps you learn to not care anymore. Whereas now it's like, some people are going to like it, some won't. And once you have that, it helps you basically helps you like develop this like fearlessness kind of thing. Whereas at first you're kind of worried, like, what are people going to think about my script? Now I'm like, whatever. If they hate it, everyone hates it. Like, doesn't matter to me. Whatever. I can always write another script. Maybe that one will be good. So yeah, you just have to kind of develop that thick skin, and you also just have to learn how to keep going and keep going and keep going, and just making connections. Like, even honestly, like working on films, even if you just go volunteer on a film set kind of thing, if you have to, meeting people who work in the industry helps a lot, because I've had a lot of people. I've gotten quite a few jobs because the producer will they'll message me out of the blue and be like, I'm looking for someone to write a horror movie for me, and someone mentioned your name. And a lot of times, especially here in Edmonton, I've gotten a couple jobs where someone's just Googled Edmonton screenwriter or something like that, and my name came up, so they reach out to me. So just kind of being known as someone who's easy to get along with, and you've had stuff made before, even if you have to make your own short films, um, which is kind of what I did. I gave a few away for free just kind of to get the ball rolling. I made a couple myself, and then I could tell people I've had 5 of my short films made before. I've had 10 of them made before. I don't do that anymore because now it's like 50 or 60 or how many credits I have. But just to get the ball rolling, it always looks good if you can prove that someone else took a chance on you to get this thing made. And if you have, and even if you make it yourself, just that you have enough ambition and work ethic to finish a movie, you're probably going to be able to finish a screenplay. Because there's so many people that say they're a screenwriter and they never finish things. There's so many people that get hired to write something and they'll never finish it. Like, I didn't even think that was possible, but it's a complaint I hear that, they'll get hired, they won't finish what they started. So if you can be someone who can regularly finish work and get it out there, you're already way ahead of a lot of people.